Welcome to your Artsy Girl podcast. I am your host, Christina Carrere. This is a podcast about art, poetry, writing, and anything about creativity. Sit back, relax, and get your dose of brain food to get your creative juices flowing. Welcome to episode 48. It is a new year. We are in the 20s. It is February 2020, and I took a little break, about a month and a half, after a whole year of weekly podcasting, because of Christmas holidays and New Year's and everything. So I took a little breather and I am back on track. I have a new featured guest, John Vanek. And with this format, I'm going to continue on with the session 1, episode 48, and continue on until my website host, Radio Public, can delineate the seasons on the website. So I'm waiting for that rollout to come out. But in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and continue on with each episode consecutively, and then I'll make the announcement when I roll out to the next season. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce to you my next featured guest. His name is John Vanek, and he graduated from Case Western Reserve University, where his passion for creative writing took root. He received his MD from the University of Rochester and practiced medicine for a quarter century. But his interest in writing never waned. Medicine was his life, but mysteries became his drug of choice. He began honing his craft in creative writing workshops, in college courses, and was gratified when his early work won contests and was published widely. He now lives happily as an ink-stained-wretch in Florida with Geni, his wife, fellow writer and best friend. He teaches a poetry workshop for seniors at a local college and enjoys swimming, hiking, sunshine, good friends, and red wine. John is an active member of the International Thriller Writers. Everyone, please welcome my next featured guest, John Vanek. Hi, John. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
It was a great pleasure meeting you and your wife, Geni, at the Palm Harbor Authors Showcase last month. And you were there, you both were there, featuring your work. Your wife is also a writer. And it was great to meet you both and kind of, learn what you all do in the Tampa Bay area also. In fact, I just want to say that you are familiar with Writers in Paradise in Eckerd College in St. Pete, Florida, which is my alma mater. You have, in fact, met and got to know quite a bit of the folks who are running it. So can you tell me, before we get into your work, can you tell me where you're from and where you grew up? That's a general question that I like to pose to all my guests so that we can just get a general feel about, because I think a lot is said, artist's background. So go ahead and tell us where you're from and where you grew up.
Okay. Geni and I are both from Cleveland, Ohio area. We had friends down here that we visited fairly often, and we fell in love with the area. So when we got the opportunity, as I got my medical practice under control, we started the Snowbird down here and became addicted to the sunshine, and the rest is history. Here we are.
How long you been here now?
Full-time, we've been here about a year and a half.
Oh, okay. So fairly new, but part-time?
Part-time since, on and off since 2005.
Ah, okay. Well, how do you like your first year full-time here?
I love it here. The summer was a little testing, but we do love it.
And the hurricane scares?
Don't bother me that much. In Ohio, you worry about tornadoes and they can come up instantly, whereas at least you have some warning down here. I'm happy to deal with that. Not happy to deal with it, but we're getting used to that.
Good. I understand you are a fiction writer, but you started out as a poet. Can you tell us how that came to be?
My writing journey started back in college. I was a pre-medical student at that point, and I only got about 2 or 3 electives, but I took one of my electives in creative writing. And I was lucky enough to get one of those professors who was very encouraging. And, he told me that there was something there, and he asked me to keep pursuing writing. And he planted a seed in my head that took many years to actually grow. But he got me thinking about writing as a serious effort. Mm-hmm. So while I practiced medicine, I didn't have a great deal of time, but my passion for writing never died. I started taking college courses when I could, and started going to workshops because I knew, like medicine or like carpentry or like anything else, I needed to learn the craft. So as part of that process, I took the workshop down at Eckerd College, Writers in Paradise, which, if your listeners are not aware of it, that's one of, I believe, the great conferences in creative writing going on right now. Mm-hmm. And it occurs the end of every January. In any case, I got a great deal of encouragement there. Laura Lippman, Michael Carita, Sterling Watson, Dennis Lehane, all those folks have been helpful in getting me from beginner to a published author, and I'm very grateful to Writers in Paradise.
And they have written your book blurb, I believe, and also some reviews.
Yeah, that's true. They've been kind in that way. It's hard to get well-known, nationally and internationally known people to lie about you on the back of the book. Oh. I managed to talk.
It's great to have friends in high places, is what they say.
That's true. I'm grateful to those folks. And I would say anyone who's listening who's a serious writer, give Writers in Paradise a long, hard look. I think it's worth the time and money.
I agree. I mean, I participated. In fact, I believe it was 2012. I did take a workshop there. In fact, I did major in creative writing. I got my BA in creative writing from Eckerd College. So it's a great school, and it is definitely a great conference. I agree. Can you tell us the premise of your series? Okay. Just give us an overview, and how many books are you into your series now?
Father Jake Austin he's my main character. He's a Roman Catholic priest. And in a lot of ways, he's a 21st century Father Brown type of character with hints of PBS's Grantchester. Mm-hmm. Unlike Father Brown, he's a reluctant amateur sleuth. He really doesn't want to be in the spotlight. He's the character is loosely based on a priest friend of mine. We were good friends, and we were having a beer or two or three over one night when he turned to me and he said, I don't know what to do with these feelings I have for this nun, which completely knocked. Well, I was raised Catholic, and I had priests up on a pedestal, as a lot of us do, and it forced me to think about the stereotypes we have of a lot of people. I mean, we think we know lawyers because they're lawyers. We think we know who they are. We don't. We think we know doctors. We don't. And we certainly don't know priests just because they're a priest. They're human like everybody else, and they have their strengths and their flaws. And so when it came down to looking for a main character, I wanted to write a character that was true to life. And I think Father Jake's is. I mean, he has great strengths, but he also has struggles. There are two other characters in all the books, and one of them is Father Jake's ex-high school sweetheart. And she is based a lot on the relationship of my priest friend, in that he called his love for this nun, or his feelings for this nun, unrequited, but it was truly hell for him. And I watched, this righteous man struggle with his feelings. And I wanted to show both sides of the human condition in the priesthood as in any other life. So that's Father Jake, and that's the basis of his relationship with the character Emily.
So that is very interesting how this character came about. But now, placing that character in the premise of being the sleuth, how do you get the idea of the cases that he takes up?
Well, every time people ask me that, my answer to where does inspiration come from is just look around. It's everywhere.
Absolutely.
And I think that has been one of the great blessings of becoming a writer. I live more in the moment because I live every day looking around, seeing people going, oh, that, I could use that in a plot, or, that person is very real, or that event is very important. And those plots, come right out of real life. All my books are fictional. The characters are fictional. The stories are fictional. But, the ongoing human chaos gives me plenty to work with.
Wow. Well, like I told you when I met you, I'm so enamored with the Thornbird series. So the priest that is not perfect kind of thing kind of intrigues me. Can you give us the sample of your work there, your book, and what is the title of the piece?
Okay, let me do one thing before that. I'd like to give you what's called the elevator pitch for my 3 books. 2 books are out, and the 3rd one is coming in March. An elevator pitch, for those who aren't writers, is simply a 1 or 2 word synopsis of your 300-page book that you can roll off the top of your head if you happen to be caught in an elevator with an agent or a publisher. So I'd like to do that for you for my 3 books.
Okay.
The first book in the Father Jake Austin mystery series is entitled Deros, D-E-R-O-S, and that's a military acronym that stands for Date of Expected Return from Overseas. But Deros is a story about coming home, and it's not a story about war. It's about coming back from war. So let me give you the elevator pitch for Deros. Father Jake Austin returns home in search of inner peace after a brutal war, but a series of murders force him to confront his own past, regrets over lost love, and his doubts about the priesthood. So that's the basic gist of book 1, Deros. The second book in the series is entitled Miracles. Both the first and second are out in paperback and ebook, and will soon be coming out in large print library editions, and I'm excited about that. Give you the elevator pitch for book 2, Miracles. Father Jake Austin's life is hurled into the vortex of 3 storms: a dying sister, a bleeding Virgin Mary statue, and a comatose infant in the intensive care unit. What will be left standing after these tempests have passed? The 3rd book in my series, which is coming out in March, is called Absolution. March 15th, I believe, is the release date. And the elevator pitch is this. Father Jake Austin must decide whether to turn his back on his biologic father, the man who deserted him as a child, or to turn the other cheek and save him from a vengeful drug lord, risking his own life and the lives of those he loves. So that's kind of the short synopsis of about 1,000 pages worth of writing.
Wow. Okay. The priest is pretty busy.
I keep him very busy, which keeps me very busy.
Yes. Can you go ahead and share us an excerpt?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll just read from the beginning of the first book, Deros. I think that's a good place to start. You'll hear this first chapter of Deros is very much about one of the 3 main characters, and his name is Tremont Macon. His nickname is Tree, and he's the local police chief. He, Father Jake, and Emily are the 3 main characters. So let me give you a reading from Deros. The chief of police, Tremont Treemakin parked his cruiser next to the coroner's meat wagon. As he unfolded his 6'6" frame like a jackknife from the driver's seat, a television van roared up, spewing gravel and filling the air with dust. Tree spat on the ground, expressing his disgust with police scanners. He wasn't fond of reporters either. A young woman with a microphone stepped from the van, glanced at him, and yelled, "Hurry, Darth Vader's here." Her cameraman leaped out of the van door like an army paratrooper, his video camera whirring. Macon spat again. He had always been partial to the nickname Tree. It suited him. Being called Darth Vader on account of his size, deep voice, and skin color, however, just pissed him off, and few people dared to call him that to his face. He waved off the reporter's questions and trudged up the dirt path, feeling every one of his 48 years. Streamers of yellow crime scene tape whipped and snapped in the wind. He signed the logbook, slipped on latex gloves, and weaved around evidence markers until he saw the county coroner near the edge of the sandstone quarry. Dr. Gerda Braun's white hair and crow's feet revealed her age, but only hinted at her toughness. Bright hazel eyes peered up at him from her weary face. "Morning, Tree. We have a female, mid-20s. She's been dead a couple days, long enough to bloat her like a tick. The kids over there were partying." Gerda pointed with her body cavity thermometer toward two teens being interviewed by a policewoman. "After drinking some of Daddy's vodka and making out, they jumped in from the ledge for a swim and discovered the body. The blonde felt something touch her thighs. She thought her boyfriend was getting frisky, so she reached for him and accidentally pulled our victim to the surface. Gave her a hand, so to speak, resulting in instant sobriety and an abrupt end to romance." Tree returned the coroner's sad smile. He hated gallows humor, but sometimes it helped to make the horrors they saw bearable. He and Gerda had both been doing this job longer than he cared to remember. "Is it an accidental drowning, Gerda?" "Definitely not, Chief. Somebody dragged her to the quarry from the south parking lot. She lost a shoe along the way. The tire iron and car jack tied to her ankles weren't heavy enough to weigh her down after the bloating started. She'd probably already begun floating up from the bottom when the kids dragged her to daylight." Tree sighed. A homicide. So much for his weekend off. Murders were rare in Oberlin, Ohio, and his sleepy little town wouldn't get much rest after this hit the evening news. The air was thick with bottle flies, dive bombing his face and buzzing his ears. The coroner seemed not to notice. Swatting them away, Tree breathed through his mouth to lessen the pungent odor of decay. He gagged anyway. Each breath tasted like a copper penny wrapped in raw ground beef, the flavor of death. He was pretty damn sure it would cling to his tongue for days. The coroner handed him a small jar of Vicks Vapor Rub to mask the smell. He closed his mouth, put a dab on his upper lip, and inhaled cautiously. "Did she have any ID on her, Gerda?" "Nope." She gestured toward the water. "God only knows what sank to the bottom." "I'll call for scuba and have a diver check it out." Tree waved to a crime scene tech making a slow sweep around the quarry's edge with a metal detector. Then he circled the body from a distance. A drop of sweat rolled past one eye, and he wiped his forehead on his shirt sleeve before removing a small spiral-bound notebook from his pocket and logging his findings in a shorthand only he could decipher. The victim lay on her side with one hand raised as if waving goodbye. Her face was partially covered by long, slimy hair that looked like black seaweed. She was petite, a pixie of a woman. Her slender arms and legs suggested emaciation, and her waist must have been tiny before the bloating. Marbled blue-gray skin almost obscured a tattoo of roses encircling her right biceps, the pink buds climbing from her elbow to her shoulder like a trellis. A small flap of waterlogged flesh had peeled away from her plum-colored lips. Even distorted by decay, however, she looked vaguely familiar. She's skinny as shit, Gerda. I'm thinking druggie. Was she a shooter? No needle tracks. We'll know more when the tox screen's back. It's not likely she's a junkie, though, the way she's dressed. The gown's Versace, and her high heels are Manolo. Expensive stuff. She must have been very pretty before the decom. Could be a top-shelf hooker, I suppose. He nodded. Any sign of a struggle? She doesn't have defensive wounds. I'll scrape under her fingernails and see if she clawed some DNA from our perp. Tree made a second lap around the body, scribbled more notes, then used a twig to move the woman's hair away from her face. A strand fluttered in the breeze, giving the illusion that a flicker of life remained. Nature was merciless after death. The woman's mouth was open as if her life had ended mid-sentence. Decomposition, accelerated by the water and warm weather, had caused her eyes to protrude like ping pong balls, producing a ghoulish stare. He followed their gaze across the murky quarry toward eternity. Rifling through his Rolodex of wasted faces in his memory, he came up empty, so he reversed the logic. How would this pixie have looked if she were heavier? Then it hit him. Oh, sweet Jesus, it's Janetta Carter. You know her, Chief? Yeah, I collared her for misdemeanor possession of weed and let her off with a warning because my wife knew her. That was several years and 30 pounds ago. I wonder why she lost all that weight. Could be she graduated from the minors to the big leagues, coke, speed, smack, too many visits to the all-you-can-ingest, inhale, inject buffet. Or she bought into that heroin chic bullcrap the fashion magazines are always selling. The coroner inspected the woman's mouth with a small flashlight. No dental erosions to suggest bulimia. I'll review her medical records and see if she had a history of anorexia, cancer, or drug abuse. What's your best guess at cause of death, Gerda? I don't guess, and I didn't bring my Ouija board. When I finish the post-mortem, you'll know for sure. There are no knife or gunshot wounds, but check this out. She pointed to the victim's upper chest. It's some sort of tiny puncture just below her clavicle. There's a matching hole in her dress with a blood stain around it, indicating she was alive when it happened. An ice pick? The wound's the right diameter, Chief. It could have collapsed a lung, though I can't feel any air crackling under her skin. A loud whirring sound drowned out her voice as a news helicopter banked in, circled the quarry, then hovered above them like a huge metal dragonfly. The sudden vertical wind flipped the pages of Tree's notebook. Son of a bitch. He punched the button on his radio. Get that frickin' whirlybird the hell away from my crime scene before I trash the First Amendment and throw someone's ass behind bars. Mid-morning, and already the inside of his head was beating out a steel drum solo. He closed his eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose, then refocused on the body. Damn, I'll have to tell my wife. They were in a book club together, a bunch of ladies who read romance novels. He took a final lap around the body. Janetta graduated from Oberlin College. Bright kid. What a waste. Some lives are so sad and short, Tree, you wonder why God even bothers. Amen, sister. Don't know if this helps, but I found this around her neck. If it's real, we're talking big bucks. She handed him a plastic evidence bag containing a ruby pendant set in gold. He flipped it over and read the inscription, to JC from EM. Nice to catch a break in a case once in a while. Maybe this bauble would be his good luck charm. Janetta worked for Everett McDermott's collection agency in town. Helps a lot, Gerda. It tells me robbery wasn't the motive. He returned the pendant and gives me probable cause to interrogate the crap out of a real scumbag. Keep me posted. I'm going to have me a chat with Mr. Repo Man. And that's the first chapter of Deros.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I could seriously, I'm in the scene And how did the details? I mean, the crime scene and the do you watch a lot of crime films, or how do you get into that?
Oh, I've been reading mysteries most of my life, and I do watch some crime on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how it is for other authors, but when I write, even a first draft, I'm seeing the story as a movie in my head, and I'm very conscious about keying into the five senses whenever possible,
Right.
especially smells and sounds, and not only sights but touch, other things. So I mean that's how that detail gets in there, and I agree with you. I think that's what makes a scene powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely want to, after that, that's the first chapter.
Yeah, it's first chapter of book one.
Wow. Well, definitely something that makes you want to continue on and learn about the whole story. Anything else you'd like to share with us? Anything about your processes? Like you did touch a little bit about where you get your inspiration.
I should go back to your original question about poetry. When I was taking some of these courses early on, I fell in love with the poetry, and for a number of years went down the poetry path until I finally got a press to publish my poetry. But what I learned by starting with poetry was to emphasize word choice. And my wife and I both write in the mornings, and we'll often stop and say, this is what I want to say, but there's got to be a better way. And when you hit the right word, you know it. And I don't think I realized before the poetry how important that was. Poetry also taught me to write short and succinct, which I try to do. My books, I hear often that people read them in 1 or 2 days, and they're fast reads, and that's my goal. That's really what I'd like people to take away. Is it's an easy read, it's a fun read, and that's that's what I'm going for.
Very good. So you're on your third book. How long of the series? You're just going to go with it, or are you thinking up a new book?
Well, Father Jake and Emily and Tree Macon have come to live in my head, so I'm rather fond of them. I'm writing book 4 currently, and I'm just finishing up the first draft, so I have a way to go. As long as I can find new and interesting ways to show these characters and new and interesting plots, I'll keep going with the series. When that becomes too difficult, then I think I'll wrap it up. But right now, 4 is coming, and there'll probably be a 5.
I'm sure, like with any author that has a series, you have your loyal readers. Do you find that to be true?
I do, and it's so much fun for me. Well, first of all, the thing I probably enjoy doing most of all is book clubs. I do them whenever asked. Any folks down in the St. Pete, Tampa area who have a book club who'd like to read one of my books, I will be happy to come afterward and answer their questions and talk to them. That's just super fun for me. But I'm also getting emails from readers from my website saying one of two things. It seems like about half the readers are saying, please let Father Jake marry Emily. And the other half is saying, if you do that, we're coming after you and your children. So the fact that people are that invested in these two characters is a wonderful surprise for me and a real joy.
That's the tension, isn't it? I mean, it's like I watched Doc Martin, right? When he finally married, what's her name? I forget her name. It was like it kind of like changed the whole tension of the movie, of the series rather. Yeah, but it can work. I mean, you just have to kind of like come with another tension plot with a lot of tension, also a lot of conflict.
I didn't expect that kind of investment, and that's really fun.
That is. Oh, but isn't it great to, create something and have such a reception that, feedback from readers? It's like, wow, This is why we write.
It is.
So can you tell us where we can find you on the internet?
Oh, absolutely. My website is www.johnvanekauthor, John, V as in Victor, Anek, www.johnvanekauthor.com.
Great. Good. Any parting words?
Keep reading and keep writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, John, it's been great catching up with you, and I wish you and Geni the best of luck. And since we are in the local area, hope our paths cross soon.
I hope so too.
Well, everyone, that is it for now. Please tune in next week for my next featured guest. In the meantime, have a productive and creative week. Bye, John.
Bye, Christina. Take care.
You too.